Hi, welcome to Inside View. I'm your host, Sid Marsh, and tonight we have something a little different. We have a homegrown movie maker here with us. Manuel Crosby and his partner, Darren Knapp, have put together a film and it's gotten quite a bit of buzz. Well, tell us about your film.
Well, thanks for having me, Sid. I appreciate the chance to be here. So our movie is called First Date. It's a story about a high school kid who has a crush on the neighbor girl and wants to take her out on a first date, but needs to get a car to do so because his parents are leaving town with the family minivan. So he buys his first car, but makes a horrible purchase, has no idea the past history of this car and the people involved with it, which leads him on one crazy night of adventures as he's trying to pick up the girl for the first date. So that's kind of what it's about.
And does he ever get the girl?
Well,
or is that a spoiler?
It's a spoiler, but let's just say things get wildly complicated.
Well, that's what makes a good movie.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, how did you get into the movie business?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've loved ever since I was a kid, since I was about 5 years old. I remember my dad took me to the movies to see Star Wars in 1997 when they re-released it, and I didn't even really know what a movie was at that point, but I was just so captivated, by what was on the screen, and I thought, whatever that is, I want to be involved with that. And then I started watching those movies actually on DVD and seeing the behind the scenes and stuff. I realized, oh wow, like people are making these things, they're creating the special effects and they're filming it and writing the script and all this stuff, and I was so interested by it all. Eventually I just said, I want to do all that stuff, and so then, picked up a camera, started making little home movies with my good friends from school, and in Calaveras High School doing the video production classes and things like that with Rick Beeler was the teacher there. And then around when I was about 16, I think, I actually found my way over here.
To public access TV.
Yeah, to public access TV. Rick Beeler had recommended I come over here and take the class with Ed Lark, and I remember I actually met you in that class.
Yeah, we were together in there.
Yeah, and we learned how to, use all the equipment here and make little shows for public access TV, and after that I started helping out on the local shoots and helping out with the filming at the Calaveras County Fair, which is how I met Darren Knapp, and we became good friends around 2011 and started collaborating on short films. And now, 10 years later, we finally finished our first feature film together.
Now, are you co-writing, or did you write it, or how did
Yeah, so he and I co-wrote this story, and it actually came about in 2017 when I was down visiting at his house. We were watching movies and stuff, and I was having a catastrophic car failure, which seemed to happen to me every 1.5 years, kind of like clockwork, My whatever heavily used car I was driving at the time would just blow up on me. So I was commiserating with him about that, and kind of like complaining about how, oh, they always say, they took great care of it, or they were the only owner, or this or that. But you never really know what they did to that car before you got it. Of course, they're not going to tell you all the messed up stuff that happened with it. So almost as like a joke, I was like, that'd be a funny idea for a movie. Some high school kid buys his first car, but has no idea the horrible people who had that car before him, and the backstory of that vehicle, and what if he's trying to get on a first date? Darren said, oh, that would be a great idea, and we're having breakfast, we're throwing ideas back and forth, and we had a pretty long breakfast because we were just outlining the entire story. And by the end of that breakfast, we had the whole plot, and I was so excited by it. The energy of it reminded me of a lot of the movies that he and I had been watching and kind of becoming friends over our mutual love of, and a lot of kind of American independent 90s and early 2000s movies that just felt like, some crazy idea for a story and these characters that kind of interlock, and the filmmakers just decide to go out and shoot it, so I was super excited by that, and I said, let's write this and let's shoot it next year, and let's do it. So yeah, then we wound up, co-directing the film together as well. And
how much did it change from the beginning to the final product?
Oh, well, quite a bit. I mean, that's the funny thing about filmmaking.
Exactly.
You have the idea in your head, but then once you come up against the realities of producing it, you kind of just have to roll with the punches and kind of, flex things a little bit as you go to get it shot. So, there was like certain script changes, there were certain location changes even, and a lot of times these things worked out better than what we had planned at first, by adapting to a weird situation. Sometimes you stumble across something even better. So,
now, how did you get your funding?
well, our funding started just with he and I, putting our money into it, and then as we were kind of developing the project, we connected with our main producer, Brandon Krause, and so then he put his money in. So it's kind of the three of us getting started, right? And we actually didn't have a full budget when we started filming, and I just thought, well, we should start anyway, maybe shoot the easiest scenes first and cut them together, and we'll just figure out the rest as we go. Like, I really wanted to get started, so we actually shot the very first scene first, several months before, and we had...
Which a lot of films don't do.
Exactly, right. But we shot that, I cut it together, did the sound, the color correction, and all that, and so it was almost like this little short film that you could watch and kind of get a general idea of the vibe of the movie without actually seeing the movie yet, but we could still use that as part of the film. So then we kept going from there. We started, as when we got all our main actors cast, started doing the main shoot, we did the easy scenes first, where it's just like, two people talking or something like that. Things that didn't cost a lot. And I was editing those together as we're shooting. And as we got going and we got more and more of the film done, then friends and family would look at it and be like, oh, you guys are actually like making this happen. Okay, I feel comfortable investing now. And then it grew out from there to people we knew from work or whatever it was. And then near the end of the process, when we had the rough cut done, then we started to, to get people we didn't know at all who were just interested in investing in films to help us complete it, because by that time, all the pieces were there and it just had to be polished up. So it became easier to raise the budget at the end of the process.
So what was the budget?
I can't say. I wish I could tell you. I'll say there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the bank account on this one,
Yeah,
but
sure.
Yeah, it was made with a lot of love and a lot of hard work. So, and definitely something achievable, I think, for anybody else who might be interested in doing something like this.
So now you have the finished product.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go from there, and what have you done with it?
Well, so we finished the film and we started submitting it to film festivals, kind of, which, Darren and I have done before. Usually it doesn't really go too far. But we figured we would try to sell it to somebody, right? And then, almost like out of the blue, we got a call that Sundance Film Festival wanted to show it, which is like
Sure.
a complete dream come true, I guess they really liked it when they saw it, and we were completely blown away. So we screened it there at the very end of January. And
How was it received?
it was received really well. I mean, we actually, from that festival screening, we found a buyer for the film who's going to distribute it to the general public. It'll be coming out in a few theaters and on home video and stuff like that. So that was Magnolia Pictures. So they put out a lot of really cool independent films over like the past 25 years. And so, we probably wouldn't have connected with them if it wasn't for the festival, so that's really amazing.
So have you've made back your investment?
Well, I'll say our investors are pretty happy, and the cool thing is there's potential for continued success for them as well, because, if it takes off, if it does well in theaters or on video or
Right.
something like that, it'll keep, the money will keep coming back. So it's really, it's pretty satisfying for sure.
So do you have more projects in the works, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I have quite a few ideas actually, which is really cool and kind of different, because usually I kind of just have one at a time, but I guess there was this little gap period kind of before and during the festival, all these little ideas started popping up. So there's a lot of things I'm really excited about working on, and I may, be able to do something on a little bit of a bigger scale next time, which would be really cool. And one of the ideas, Darren and I are actually writing together as well, so we'll see, how it goes. But we're great friends, so I imagine we'll be collaborating in one way or another for a long time.
Did you get a lot of connections through Sundance?
Oh yes, it's quite a few. I mean, I met many other filmmakers, who also had great movies there, and other actors and people like that. I actually connected with an agency that wanted to represent me, so I have an agent now.
So now you have an agent
out there, looking for like scripts that I might be interested in, or actors or producers who might be interested in collaborating, which is really cool.
So you've gone up to a whole different level now.
I mean, well, I guess I'm on the ladder on the way or something, I don't know, but it's wild, man. I never, as far as we thought with this movie was like, oh, let's make a really cool movie, and then like show our friends and get it out there somehow, and maybe it'll in a couple years it'll be like a cult movie or something like that, like we never thought it would start with such a splash, but it was a long time coming. It took us probably about 3 years or so to make the film. It was a long process and a lot of work, but I mean, well worth it.
But you've been involved with film for a long time.
Yeah.
But you must see that how technology has made it so much easier.
Yeah.
Almost anybody can do a film.
Exactly.
They don't do it well, but anybody can do it.
Yeah, and that's really inspiring. And I mean, I'm young. Like, there's been a lot of evolution in this field, and I kind of came in at a great time where, anybody who wanted to could go get a relatively decent camera, and go shoot something that's of a technical quality level that it would hold up to scrutiny. And from there, it's just all about the quality of the story and how you use those tools, So the technology is not really a barrier of entry anymore as it was maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and that's really exciting, and that's what allowed us to make this film. Had we tried to make this film in the 90s, it probably would have been, much more expensive, right, and a lot more difficult to pull off. So that was a great gift for us.
What do you find the hardest part of filmmaking for you?
Oh gosh, that's an interesting question. I actually think it's kind of funny. I think the hardest part for me is actually just balancing, being so into the project and putting all my efforts into it with everything else that that a normal human being needs to take care of in their life. Personal health and physical and mental health and relationships and things like that.
They all go to the side.
Yeah, which they shouldn't, though.
Yeah.
And that was actually the biggest thing that I learned from doing this, because I had never been in this situation, such a long, extended project before. Usually, if it's a short film, it's a very short, focused amount of time, and then it's done. And so maybe you can get away with just completely throwing yourself at it 100%. But I realized over the course of this that there needs to be a balance. It's more of a marathon than a sprint, and if you take care of, yourself and connections with those around you, that's what gives you the fuel to get through some of the challenges, and get over the finish line eventually. So that was the biggest thing I learned, and the most difficult thing, I think, with the production. But I'm glad that I learned it now,
That's true. While you're still young.
Yeah. Right.
Now, what advice would you give an up-and-coming filmmaker?
Well, I think the best advice I could give is to just start making stuff. Everybody has a camera in their pocket now.
Right.
Cell phones are more advanced than the cameras of 10 years ago. It's pretty amazing. So use whatever you can to get started and just start learning how to tell stories. And you might think, oh, it doesn't matter, it's not as good as the movies I see or whatever. but it does matter because you're building those skills. And also, like, for people you may want to collaborate in the future with, you never know who will see those short films and what you're doing, and they'll see that you're actually able to start and finish a project. That's super important to convince those people to help you go do a bigger project and then a bigger one and a bigger one. So you slowly kind of work your way up. And then, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't have as big of a budget as you think you need, or any budget at all. Like, there, you know, if you find a way to make the film, good things will come of it. There will be lessons learned. You'll have a product at the end, and it won't just be an idea that's floating around, you know, in the ether. It'll actually be, there will be an end result, and that's what I tell everybody who wants to get into film. Just go do it. You know, Darren and I both are very inspired by Robert Rodriguez, who, you know, back in the 90s when he started, he kind of had the same mindset. I'm just going to go out and make this film, do it, you know, do it cheap, you know, do whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to go do it. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to have fun and make a cool movie at the end. And look where he is now. You know, he's one of the top directors in the film business, and he still has that same mindset, you know, and he's made such a wide array of projects. Like, he's kind of shown that everybody has that creativity inside them. You don't need, it doesn't matter if you don't have the money or you don't have all the technical skill. You know, you're a creative person, and that you can find your way through pretty much any obstacle with that. So
now, you didn't have a formal education in film or anything.
I did, actually. I did.
Okay.
I did wind up going to film school, actually.
Where'd you go?
I went to USC in Los Angeles.
Oh, well,
however, but I always,
prestigious.
yes, but I always say that, you know, that's not the difference maker. Darren didn't go to film school at all. He's completely self-taught, and I actually learned probably more from him about how to use cameras and make films and cut things together than I did in the beginning of film school, because when we started making films in 2011, I hadn't even started the film classes yet, but we started making this film over the summer called Broadcast, and through trial and error I learned so much. When I actually did get into the film classes, everyone was like, "Where'd you learn all this stuff?" I learned it right here, right here in this studio. So, and that's, you know, that's free.
Right.
So,
it's true. Take advantage of it.
Exactly. And it can be great to go to college because you have, you know, basically allotted time where your job is basically to focus on those subjects that you're studying, whether it's film or whatever it is, you know. But if that's not available to you, it's okay. Like, there are so many other ways to get that education. So
did USC open any doors for you, or?
You know, I think the most important thing about going to USC was I made a few really good friendships there of people my own age, you know, that I have collaborated with since then. And so you kind of like meet your tribe, you know, and sort of become friends, and then you rise up together, you know. It's not like going to school opened some door to some job, you know, where I was like gonna go be a film director or something like that.
You didn't have an internship or anything like that?
No, and that stuff doesn't really happen, I think, because filmmaking, you know, since it's an art form, the way that people are hired is not based off of their education or what's on their resume. It's based on their work, if they've done it or not. Which, going back to my earlier point, if you have a catalog of short films of work to show, that's better than
real, so to speak.
That's better than having a film school degree, because they want to know that you can actually make the thing, you know. So
are you looking for other projects now?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I'm, you know, like I mentioned, I'm working on a couple ideas of my own, and I think that's probably what excites me the most.
Is it always going to be kind of feature films, or would you do documentary? Or
I mean, I've been involved with. I'm actually involved with the documentary right now, directed by another Calaveras County resident named Lisa Michelle. We've been working on for several years.
What are you doing for it?
I'm doing the editing right now, and I actually was while we were filming First Date, I was also helping her film this documentary. So it's very spread out, and we'd be driving down to Lancaster. It's a documentary about a former rodeo champion named Sammy Thurman Brackenberry, who had won the world championship, I think in the 60s, and was kind of wanting to go on one last ride on her horse, because she's now, you know, pretty old and can't really see anymore and has a hard time getting on the horse. But she still says, you know, well, yeah, I could ride if I had something to do. You know, if I had to wrangle some cattle, I could go out and do it. So we were kind of like documenting her life a little bit and telling her story. But yeah, as far as what I want to do next, I mean, I really love fictional feature films. There's some, you know, that was my what got me into all this, was watching you know, a fiction film in the movie theater. So I would love to continue making those. You know,
who inspires you the most, of all the directors or actors or whatever?
That's a hard question. There's too many. There's too many. I mean, you know,
you get something from everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I think you know, if I had to pick one person, I guess, simply for the mindset, the ideology, would be Robert Rodriguez. You know, use your creativity and you can accomplish anything. So yeah, but I mean, I love, you know, Lucas and Spielberg and Tarantino, the Coen brothers, you know, Christopher Nolan. The list goes on and on and on. Like, I could talk all day about filmmakers and how much I love their stuff. So
now, with your project, did you have to do any special effects or CGI or anything like that? And was that a learning experience for you?
It did. Most of our effects were practically done, and that it was definitely a learning experience, but also a really fun thing, because that is kind of really taps into what got me interested in film. Like, how do they do these effects, you know? So, you know, I guess mild spoilers here, but there's some blood effects in the movie. There's some gunshot effects. There's all these, like, you know, bullets hitting things at one point, and some little camera tricks and practical tricks we got to learn how to do to make that stuff. And there was a little bit of post-production visual effects, nothing computer generated, but like compositing existing shots or elements kind of on top of each other to make things seem like they were happening. Where, for example, there's a scene with a scenic overlook of Valley Springs, which actually was not at that location. We shot the scene out in Wallace, and there was no view at this overlook, but we actually put in the town of Valley Springs down below later, and we had hiked up by the cross at Valley Springs to get the shot of the town, so we kind of like put those together after the fact. So little things like that are all over the place.
Much better.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Movie magic.
What other things would you like to learn, or when it comes to film?
I mean, there's so much, you know.
Are you more interested in the technical end, or more the script end, or would you ever act? Would you ever?
I wouldn't. That's one thing I'm not interested in, is acting. Although I had to do plenty of that in our first home movies, because there were no actors available. So it was me and my good friend Ian Robertson taking turns hitting record. He was also in the class too. I don't know if you remember him, but we'd hit record and then go stand in front of the camera and then switch the camera to get the other person's shot. So I had enough of my acting days, but I would like to just really improve at everything, you know, and I like to have involvement in all parts of production. I'm super interested in all that stuff. I love being behind the camera, even when I'm directing. Usually they separate those roles. There's a cinematographer, and then the director only talks to the actors. I like to do both. I like to just really get in there and be involved, but you know, working with actors is probably one of the last things I started to learn in my
That's
progress
a whole
through
skill
film.
set, right?
And I've really, really enjoyed that, rehearsing with them and finding character and things like that. So
getting the most out of the actor.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So that's a lot of fun, and I still have a long ways to go in every aspect, but I look forward to continuing to learn through doing it.
You strike me as the kind of person that would be very hard to sell a script to somebody, because you want to do it.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to take your words and then make the movie.
Actually, yeah, I mean, you know, I've thought about that, and it's, you know, we even very briefly, Darren mentioned that when we came up with this idea, and just instantly I was seeing the shots in my head as we were talking about the very first, you know, iteration of the concept, and I just felt like I had to tell that story. You know, maybe there will be a day where I'll have too many stories to tell, and, you know, just to get them all done, like, you know, someone else will have to tell some of them. But that's definitely a a challenge, you know, letting your children go.
Was it a challenge working with another person, both, you know, directing and writing? I mean, did you and Darren ever have moments where
No.
disagreements or anything like that?
No, actually, I think, you know, probably because we're such good friends and already kind of aligned anyway, and we had already sort of talked about too, you know, on the set who was going to be doing what, and he really just gave me a lot of trust to kind of lead the way. And then in the script stage, like I was saying, it just sort of, we were kind of on the same page from the beginning, you know, as we're throwing ideas back and forth. And if there was like a little question of where something would go, we just talk about it and look at all the options and pick the best one and kind of go from there. And I think that's what Darren's really interested in too, is like the writing side of the storytelling as well. So
did you find that one had more strength in one area and one the other?
Yeah.
One's funny, one's clever, that kind of thing, or whatever?
Well, I think Darren came up with quite a few funny jokes, you know, in the script,
Right.
but he definitely was most interested in the story side, you know, and I think, you know, and I really love that as well, but I think, you know, I was really good, like, working with the actors, you know, and kind of wrangling the set and all that, you know, which he didn't have the interest in, so we were able to kind of, like, balance those things out. But then the good thing is, too, like, again, I learned quite a bit from him 10 years ago, and so we both, between the two of us, had enough technical knowledge that we never couldn't make the movie, you know.
Right.
Like, we always, between the two of us, we could do anything that needed to be done to get it done, and that's doesn't always happen, so I'm really
How big a
grateful
cast
for
was
that.
it?
Oh, wow, it was, I mean, we had at least 45 people.
Wow.
So and we had at least, I think, around 20 pretty significant roles,
Right.
which is not
Speaking
common.
roles and
Yeah,
all
which is
that.
not common for an independent film, unless you're Jim Miller making Living by the Gun, maybe. But yeah, so it was another big challenge was scheduling everybody, and
That's
that was
true.
my job, and
Cat
that was.
wrangling.
Oh yeah, that was, and you know, like any good, this movie doesn't have a wedding in it, but it might as well have, because in any movie with a wedding, all the main characters are at that wedding at the end, and that's how our movie ends too. There's something
So
big that
everybody's
goes
there.
down, and everybody's there, and it was a really, it was a tough shoot. It was very complex and hard to schedule, but it makes the movie a lot of fun to watch. So I can't wait for people to see that scene.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I want to see it on Netflix.
Oh yeah, you know, it could end up on Netflix. So it'll be, like I mentioned, it'll be coming out in some theaters, and then I think they do like a premium video on demand thing where you can like buy it to stream, or you know, buy it on DVD or something like that. And then a few months after that, I think the distributor Magnolia is going to try to sell it to the streaming service, either Netflix, Hulu, you know, the Amazon, like all those kind of things.
Wow, we've learned a lot, Manuel. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
Well, I'm Sid Marsh, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Inside View.